Station. We're now getting started over here on the innovation stage in the southwest corner with the big screen. So come on over. We've got a great panel coming up with some great entrepreneurs and people associated with local organizations here in Kansas City that are deeply involved in the maker community and what's going on out there. We've got a great story to tell and some exciting information to share. So to get started, I want to introduce our panel. We have Ryan Bell, representing the Maker Studio here at Science City. It's a great organization here that's really bringing together makers and focusing them here at Union Station. We have Meredith Nelson with the Johnson County Public Library. We have Nick Ward-Bopp with the Maker Village of Kansas City. There's Eric Kirkendall with the Lawrence Makerspace. And our moderator this morning, Ilya Tabaka, with supporting the KC Digital Drive and one of our local entrepreneurs here in Kansas City. So Ilya, go ahead and take it away.
I got it. It just takes a second to kick on. So thanks for coming to the panel. We're at Maker Faire this year in Kansas City. So that means people are making stuff, and you've probably been around a little bit. Lots of stuff going on. But where does making happen outside of Maker Faire, right? Before, a large part of the national economy was in manufacturing, right? So people made stuff as part of their daily work. They had stuff in their garages. That's maybe less the case than was 20, 30, 50 years ago. And so maker spaces have really come to help fill that gap and give some people kind of an outlet for that creativity. And so today we have interesting sampling of some of those maker spaces in the communities, and they have kind of different roles that they fill and maybe different communities that occupy those spaces. And so we'll take a little bit of time talking about what are these maker spaces, whether they're at the library or a community maker space or even the Maker Studio here in Union Station. How are they different? How you might want to engage, what's interesting about them, and then hopefully talk about some of the roles that they fill in the maker ecosystem, and then have a discussion. And then the coolest thing about this is then we can have a conversation, right? What's interesting to the audience. And so that's kind of the format. We'll take a couple minutes, maybe 5 or 7 on each, to kind of talk about what the mission of each space is, some of the makeup capabilities, what some of the spaces are excited about, and then we'll kind of ask some general ecosystem type questions. And so in no particular order, let's start with Meredith with the Johnson County Library and have her say a couple words about her space, kind of what the mission of the space in the library is, and introduce us to the Johnson County Library Maker Space.
Hi. So I'm the Maker Librarian at Johnson County Library, and we have a Maker space there in our Central Branch Library off of 87th and Farley in Overland Park. And this is actually our sign from outside of the building, or the room, I should say. So the mission of the library, of course, is to provide materials and access and experiences to people, whether they can afford them privately or not. And so the Makerspace kind of fulfills that mission by providing access to materials and tools that they may not be able to afford otherwise, or may use very infrequently, but still have some kind of need for them. So we've been building up our collection in the Makerspace based on that. We do serve all of the Kansas City area. You don't have to live in Johnson County to get a library card, so anyone can come in and use it. Printing on our MakerBots are free. So we also provide that for students who are doing projects or things like that. And we've actually done some printing of prosthetic hands and things like that for people who wouldn't be able to afford or have access to a 3D printer otherwise. So that's one purpose that we kind of serve in the maker community. Our capabilities, we have a mixed media space and maker space, so we have both making tools as well as media stuff. So we have the Adobe Creative Suite, so you can make websites, graphic design, things like that, as well as traditional maker stuff, Eggbot, the 3D printers, 3D modeling software, and things like that. And the capabilities of our patrons range from absolute beginner who have never heard or seen any of this before to experts in the field. So that's an interesting kind of difference that I have to some other maker spaces where they're exclusively, they're used to this stuff, they've seen it before, they know how to use it. We have people who've never seen a mouse before who still don't understand how to use a mouse for their computer, and we are helping them use the maker space. The most interesting and surprising thing to happen was there was a young man who helped a younger boy create or adjust a robo-hand from the RoboHand project, and that kind of took off in the press, and there was quite a lot of press around that. I don't know if anyone saw it, but and that young man, Mason Wild, will be presenting at the White House, the first White House Maker Faire. So that's kind of been the most exciting thing to happen so far there. And as I said, my space, I think, kind of fits in the larger ecosystem, as we serve beginners, people who have never seen or heard of this stuff before, and we can take that opportunity for people who have more interest and redirect them to a place that might be better for them, whether it's a woodcutters group or a larger maker space coming here to Union Station. And so we try to make connections so that we can help people find the right place for them.
That's excellent. Thanks for that great introduction. I got a question for the audience. How many of you have been in a maker space? How many of you have been in multiple maker spaces? Mostly in Kansas City, or no? Yes? Who? Okay, all right, so mixed audience, very good. It's always good to kind of know who's in the audience and kind of what the experience is, so that's helpful. Next, let's get Ryan to introduce the Maker Studio, which is right here in Union Station, actually inside of Science City. And she can tell us a little bit about that space, including some of the most exciting things that have happened there.
All right, well, like you said, we have a Maker Studio now in Science City, which is located that end of the building downstairs. So if you guys get a chance, you should come down. We're doing a variety of activities today, and they're all make and takes. We've got learn to solder, 3D printing, making marionettes out of recycled materials, all kinds of fun stuff. So our space serves Science City guests. So our primary audience is children, and we do walk-up activities daily. So with Science City admission, you can come in and you can make something and take it home. We have Saturday open houses where we have a bunch of different stations, and you can come and make things, you can explore, and just kind of pick our brains on anything you might have a question about. We also run field trip classes inside our space. So field trip groups from all around the KC area can come in and take a class in 3D printing or electronics, things like that. We offer programs to scout groups and focusing on education and kind of expanding on educating children. We also do teacher trainings for area schools and groups. So we'll have people come in and learn how to facilitate maker activities. The capabilities of our Maker Studio right now, we have some 3D printers, we have a couple shop bots, so we do have some CNC high-end equipment, but also we do a lot of low-end. We get massive support from everybody at Union Station, everybody that works here and all of the businesses, and we pull in tons of recycled goods every month, and we use a lot of those in our walk-up activities because we want to show everybody that comes down to Science City that it's fully within their capabilities to make something. So using all those low-end, what you might say is like crafting supplies, sort of, gets people addicted to it and gets them in on a very, low-end way that they're not scared of at all. So what's after that? Oh, the most interesting and surprising things. I don't know, we've got all kinds of fun things. I mean, working with kids on a day-to-day basis, we get a bunch of crazy things. I think maybe the excitement is a really good part of the Maker Studio, because when guests come to Science City, they're not really expecting to find any of that there. So the adults are just as excited as the kids are, and we actually get, almost as many adults making the projects as we do kids, and that's probably the most surprising thing that I found. And then we just want to be supportive of the community, so fitting into the broader maker ecosystem. we want to make makers. We are focused on the kids, we are focused on future makers, but we also have a really nice perspective because we catch people off guard. We've got people that aren't intending on going to a makerspace, so they might not even know that things are around like making in general, but we also send people to all of these other maker spaces and we let them know there's tons to do around the city. So we try to grab people and just expose them to making in general.
Okay, very good. That's a great introduction. So now we've talked about a space in Johnson County Library, a space here in Union Station, kind of, I guess, Crown Center, Crossroads-ish almost. Now we're going to talk about a space in Midtown that's maybe a little bit different, but we'll get Nick Ward-Bopp to introduce the Maker Village and tell us a little bit about what the Maker Village is up to and kind of some of the exciting things happening there.
Thanks, Ilya. I also just want to say how excited I am about what these folks are doing in their spaces and how it's more focused towards kids and making the next makers. I think that is much more important than what a lot of the rest of us do. So I think that's super awesome and super cool. And what Eric's doing in Lawrence, I think, is fantastic. So thank you. We would definitely represent the more grassroots side of maker spaces. We rehabbed an old building at 24th and Jarboe, and during that process, me and my buddy ran into this issue where we needed tools. We didn't have tools to make the kitchen cabinets, to make tables for the place, and we were kind of broke, and we were reusing a bunch of the material. So that idea of a makerspace came out of a necessity that we ran into when we were rehabbing this building. So we said, well, let's do it. Let's buy our own building and open up a makerspace. So that's what we're currently doing at 31st and Cherry. Right now, a lot of folks in Midtown are working on their own houses. They're wanting to do sustainability-related projects, so maybe rain barrel collection kits, or maybe converting a bike trailer that used to carry their kids. Maybe they want to convert that to a cargo trailer. You know, something kind of simple, low tech. So, you know, those are the folks we're going to kind of foster and go after. Folks that just don't have a bunch of tools in their garage, or a friend with an awesome shop, but they want to make stuff. You know, they might have found something on Pinterest, and they're like, we want to make this magnetic, you know, knife board and put it in our kitchen, and we don't want to go buy it from IKEA. You know, we can catch a lot of people, and we can give them the bug on making things, and that's what we want to do. We want to lower the barriers into making things, and we want to give people that bug. Capabilities, we're mostly woodworking. We have some metalworking. We have a laser cutter. We're going to have soldering stations here shortly. You know, MIG. We're going to be getting TIG, and some other capabilities for metal. But we are primarily wood. We use a lot of reclaimed wood. We have a lot of good woodworking equipment. So, most interesting thing that's happened in our shop, probably just the collaborations that we really had nothing to do with. People meeting there that know how to do different things, and they're like, "Why haven't we met before?" You know, I'm a metal worker, and you're really into the biking community, and let's collaborate on a project. So probably just the interactions and the collaborations that we really had nothing to do with other than having a shop. That's probably the most exciting thing. So how we see ourselves fitting in the broader maker ecosystem, we're going to be a niche shop. You know, there's going to be 15 maker spaces in Kansas City. Each individual one is going to be doing their own thing in the next 10 years, and we just want to be a part of it and foster, probably more of the reclaim materials and sustainability related projects. So
Great. Thanks, Nick. And last but certainly not least is Eric with the Lawrence Makerspace. So we'll call it regional-ish, but our neighbors in Lawrence have an exciting space as well, and so Eric's going to tell you a little bit about that, how they got started, what their mission is, and some things, and then we'll kind of talk about how these spaces work together, ecosystem, things like that, and then grab some questions. So go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to see Nick. We haven't crossed paths in a year because we've both been working so hard. I've heard about Meredith about 20 times, so it's so nice to see you. And we haven't met. Thank you very much. Very cool. I love it. I want to preface with something. All of you know the world has changed. Used to be, maybe your fathers or your grandfathers or your moms or grandmoms could go out and get a corporate job somewhere and be kind of taken care of if they did their job. You had a career. It came pretty easy. The world isn't like that anymore. And fundamentally, that's why we built the Lawrence Creates Makerspace. We're an economic development organization that believes that sustainable economic development starts from the bottom up. It's about people sharing their skills, teaching each other, collaborating, working together, designing and building products and services. That's what we're all about. That said, we did not set out to build a makerspace. Several of us got together, proposed to the city of Lawrence that we do a consulting engagement for them, take a look at Final Fridays, which is like First Fridays here in Kansas City, and make recommendations on where to take it. So we interviewed and we surveyed creative people in Lawrence and asked them, what do you need? What do you need to be successful? What they needed was a collaborative space. They needed tools, training, and business services. So we looked and waited and finally found a building. We rented it. We started building it. It developed very organically. We brought our members together. We did a lot of planning. What do you need? We knew what tools we needed first because we'd done that work. What else do you need? And as it developed, at some point we went, well, what are we going to call it? And we got out looking around. We went, oh my God, we just built a makerspace. We backed into it. I think we backed into it for the right reasons. We were trying to meet community needs. So I want to pick my notes up because I want to answer the questions that were asked. Notable aspects. Number one, inexpensive. $20 a month, $20 initiation fee. Makes it really tough to pay the bills. But we wanted the place to be accessible to people who were unemployed or underemployed, as well as college professors and students and all kinds of other people. And we've been successful in that. We've had zero outside funding. All of our makerspace has been funded by the 4 founders, and I'll talk about us real briefly, and members, and with a little bit of help from our very generous landlord. So we built this ourselves. We built this as a community, and we work together as a community. There's about 75 members at this point, probably 50, 60, I guess about 60 paying members. So we're coming, actually, we've been in place for a year. We're getting close to sustainability. The 4 founders were me. My background is a NASA project manager, and then other government jobs after that. Barbara Kerr, who's an international expert on creativity. In fact, she's flying to Paris. She's here today, flying to Paris on Tuesday to do a keynote on that subject. George Paley, real estate investor and artist, and John Hackmeister, KU sculpture professor. So we had a pretty broad group and we still do, with a lot of different skills. Another aspect of our makerspace that I think is really unique is we work hard to balance the people that are focused on art versus technology. So we have lots of artists. We have painters, we have textile artists, we have all kinds of art going on. We also have people who are totally into high tech. What we hoped would happen was collaboration between those groups and new things coming out of it, and it's worked. Really cool stuff is happening. Completely staffed by volunteers right now. As we do a little better financially, we'll get some paid staff. And as I mentioned earlier, just at the point of self-sustainability, University of Kansas has partnered with us in small but significant ways, and I think that's growing. What tools do we have? The number one tool I'm going to list is our member lounge. We're a community, we're about collaboration. People like to hang out, they like to talk, they like to create. We have a place for that. We have a photo studio. That was one of the primary needs revealed in our survey, with lights so people can shoot photos of their work or their friends or whatever. Large format printer. 3D printer built by Tim Middleton, which I bet a lot of you guys know Tim, who also teaches 3D printing at our place as well as here. We have a really good wood shop. We have a lot of computers, Adobe Creative Suite. We are just now putting in a metal shop. We got a new member who had a metal shop and storage. He's bringing the whole darn thing in. Biggest, coolest projects. Number one is our brain hacking team. We're back here at table 106, I think it is. It's kind of by the ladies' room on the right side of the big room back there. Check it out. Our folks use headphones. They've built a graphics program that'll show your brain at work. It's very, very cool. We've got a textile team who's been doing good work, sending designs to New York. I think they're going to hit it big. Lawrence Creates Video is our little video business. We do videos for nonprofits, for artists, for makers. Last but not least, we have a renter-maker program. So we encourage our members to sell their services if they want to, whether they work in the wood shop or whether they're IT people. We're just rolling that out. It's just starting. Last thing I'll mention is what we've accomplished. Whoops, one more thing after that. What we've accomplished so far, about 80 classes in the course of the year, 12 large art shows. We have an art gallery I neglected to mention going through our services and facilities, and about 120 creative events in a year. Next 2 years, KU Business Training. KU approached us. They want to give business classes in our space. We're thrilled. Focused on small entrepreneurs like we serve. We want to build out our wood shop and the metal shop that's coming into a prototyping facility. And last but not least, we want to keep working on our financial condition so we can get paid staff and continue to expand services.
Thank you. Another great introduction of a community space in Lawrence. So there's a number of spaces in Kansas City that aren't represented. And just, this was a very good sampling of spaces within the library, within kind of the Children's Museum, more of a skilled trades maybe around woodworking because it filled a specific need. Eric's space, filled a specific need. Within certain corporations, other communities, there are actually innovation and maker spaces also. And so many of you raised your hands saying that you had been to a maker space before. Many of these things is because you were curious, you wanted to see what other people were doing. So I encourage you to keep doing that. Maybe visit some of these spaces, maybe fund in some of the spaces that aren't on the panel. And the exciting thing that's been happening maybe within the last year and a half or two is really kind of a focused effort to try to get the spaces to talk to each other. And so over that period of time, the spaces have sort of become aware of kind of what the others have been up to, and you've seen that a little bit up here in kind of the exchange. And so Nick wants to say a word maybe about that.
I would just say that Hammer Space, who's not represented here, is massive. They do a ton of really, really cool stuff. They're an anchor for Kansas City, for the maker community. Can't hear it? Okay. They're an anchor here. They're awesome. They're doing a ton of cool stuff, and they're all around here. Also, MCC Fab Lab in the East Bottoms is fantastic, both for just showing up to make stuff and get a really cheap membership, but also more of like learning a trade, learning to be a machinist, learning the software, that sort of thing in a more formal fashion. But and KCAI has a great woodworking shop. Woodworkers Guild here in Kansas City is fantastic. Those guys know how to do so much. So there's so many places to port in. We are a tiny sampling, and the ecosystem is growing. There's going to be more spaces like ours. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and that's a great perspective. And the other thing is here at Maker Faire, it's a great event that has gravity to bring people that are interested in making things, right? But throughout the rest of the year, there are places that you can go to kind of engage. And since most of you have been to a place, I encourage you to bring a friend to that place and, kind of keep that cycle going. Keep introducing people to places where they can explore the creativity, make. Even as they come through, Science City, now there's an opportunity to kind of talk about the Maker Studio that's, part of that experience and really help bridge kind of the completely uninitiated with people that are already familiar. What are some of the, I guess I'll ask the first kind of panel questions. What are some of the needs that you see kind of being met? So you guys have talked about, interesting applications at the library, a part to introduce children at a science museum, and maybe more of a general audience, people not having tools and a place to work. Do you see any other kind of things that you're starting to talk about that are observed as you talk in your communities? And anybody can, talk to that.
Well, as a library, one of the things that we are concentrating more and more on is also a community and collaborative space. It's a natural place for people to come together and either learn new things or use the space in a way that meets their community needs. And so we are working more and more to build more community at our makerspace. And while it doesn't fill a huge need now, we're hoping that with meeting spaces and private study rooms and things like that, we can increase that. We're going to be getting some new dirty space so we can do more classes and collaboration, more on the maker level, and we're going to have a better media studio as well coming up in the next couple of years. So I'm hoping that will kind of meet more of a community space need that obviously they have such in Lawrence, and we do have maker spaces here in Kansas City. Many of them are like subscription based and things like that, but the library is a free place to do that, and so we're trying to fill that need.
One thing that we're trying to push out more and more that I mentioned earlier is we're doing teacher training programs. So if anybody knows a teacher that's interested in starting a maker curriculum in their school or in their classroom, that's a way that we can really touch somebody that's going to go out and touch 30 other kids in their classroom or 10 other teachers in their school. So that's something we really need help with getting the word out. We would love, it's all educators. It's not just people that are in KC school districts. So, scout leaders, anybody that's running a club. That's our big focus, is teaching teachers so they can help us out in the movement.
Very good. I always want to leave plenty of time for discussion, so let's get a question or two to our interesting panel and kind of see what questions the audience has. Anybody have any questions? There's a microphone coming for you right there. Thank you.
Has anybody put together any kind of a mobile lab? For example, I'm in Fort Scott, Kansas. We're kind of a third world country about an hour south of here. And I'm president of the local Pioneer Harvest Fiesta. And I've got an idea for a technology tent down there. And it would be great if there was some kind of a lab that could show up and demonstrate some of this stuff.
So I know somebody on the panel, actually a couple of people on the panel that might specifically talk on that. Who wants to go first? Eric? Yeah, go ahead.
I better pass this one so I don't. Barbara Kerr and I just did a presentation at KU to a teachers conference, and I walked out of there blown away by how interested educators are in makerspaces. And since then, we've been talking a lot about putting together some kind of a mobile facility. We're nowhere close. It's nowhere beyond thinking about it. But I'd love to chat afterwards if you have time. I'd very much appreciate it. I do want to say one other thing. I'm thrilled with your focus on collaboration, because absolutely we started by going to Hammerspace and makerspaces in New York City and a whole lot of other places. It is a fabulous community.
To the point of the mobile makerspace, I know the Kansas City Library has a digital media lab, and they do have a vehicle because they're going from location to location right now. I don't know what their outreach beyond their facilities are, but their focus is digital audio, computer programming, 3D printing, so you might look into them.
Meredith has probably something to say on the topic also.
Yeah, I actually have a truck that has this sign on it, and I've been filling it up and going out to all of our branches in Johnson County, and that's all I can do right now is Johnson County, but we have been in talks of getting a larger trailer, and I don't know how far out that goes, but the one thing that I would actually recommend is Kansas actually has an interesting library system where we have, for smaller rural groups, there are, like our group is the Northeast Kansas Library Group, Neckles, and they actually do things in a broader sense. And I know that some of them are working on maker kits and things like that, so you might want to contact your library and see if they have larger connections for regional kits and things like that they are working on. That may be in the works, I don't know for sure, but that is a great idea. And I mean, if I could bring my mobile out to you, I would, and I could talk to somebody, but
The other thing I would encourage is I'm willing to bet that Fort Scott probably has some capabilities sitting in people's barns, and kind of rural communities tend to have many things available. So even building community around that topic in where you live, I think you'll be surprised what tools, interests, and capabilities are just next door that you don't know about. And so I guess this is where I'll give kind of a quick head nod to Aaron Deacon with KC Digital Drive. Part of the conversation regionally has happened when we started reaching out, and with Mike Dalton at Hammer Space and other places around town, saying, what is everybody doing? Why can't we get together every once in a while and talk about where things are, what do we need, where things are going? And those conversations and questions and interaction has really helped to continue to drive that. And so Dave Dalton, yeah. Right, so great question. Let's get another question. Yep.
Hi, I'm from Northwest Arkansas, and we're working on building a makerspace. And we've got a pretty good community that we've built, but we're trying to get volunteers to help us with the building and help us put it together. And our biggest enemy so far is apathy. How do you fight apathy in your groups?
Anybody?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. I think the interest and commitment just has to come organically. People are busy, overworked, stressed, other things happening in life, and what we found in the last year is at different times, different people will kind of rise to the challenge. There's never enough people, but it seems to just kind of happen.
I think exposure is a big part of fighting that. I think if you get out there over and over and over again and you show all of the cool things that you can do, all of the excitement that making is, and you just inundate people over and over again with it, they start to turn around. Because we've had issues ourselves with that, and now we're fully supported by everybody around here. Just because we keep kind of pushing it on them and say, hey, look at this really cool thing I made. Do you want to learn how to make it? And just over and over and over again. It's really exhausting in the beginning because you're putting 20 times more into it than you're getting, back. And you're not sleeping, but I think if you just push through it in the beginning, it has so much of a gift later on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I would just say documentation and publishing, your projects and the information you're doing, and collaboration, getting other people involved. You're touching other networks, you're touching other people, you're touching different types of makers. So
I have a different problem because I work for the government. I mostly have bureaucratic red tape. So even though I have great ideas, I can't move on them. So even if I have really enthusiastic people, they become apathetic by waiting for whatever other process they have to go through to volunteer and things like that. And I try to keep building relationships and networking and getting out there to encourage them to keep coming, and eventually they'll come back.
And I guess I would just add a thought. When you put, tools and things that enable somebody that wants to make something, and they get excited about that and kind of documenting that experience. That's how I met Nick, actually, as he was working on the Jarboe initiative, and he had a Tumblr, I believe, or a blog where he essentially just put, every week, here's where I'm working on. I'm like, who is this guy? Where is Jarboe? and then, another space actually that's interesting is kind of open source ecology. That's not too far from here in Kansas City, and that's actually very, very early on how I, years and years ago, initially before even the early TED Talks, heard about open source hardware making, that kind of stuff, is there's a group of kind of crazy people that were really excited about making stuff, and we're stumbling along trying to make it happen, right? And that kind of, the power of that story, for me at least, actually made me think about, what else is going on, and started kind of exploring the general community. So even kind of what's possible, even though you may be many steps away from that, is, I think, a very helpful thing. It's a great question. Do we have a question back there? Great. Let's get you a microphone.
Do you have to pay royalty fees to use the words Maker Faire?
I think that's a make question. I do not know how to answer that question. What do you guys think? I think Make actually owns the official Maker Faire, but there are definitely fairs where people make stuff that aren't called Maker Fairs, and so there are other event opportunities. But yeah, I think the Maker Faire name. So there, it looks like you could get in some stuff.
You could just drop the E.
Not that we're giving any suggestions along those lines, but yes, there's many things you can do around spaces, events, things like that, where people will understand what you do. All right, good question. Other questions? We got, what was that? Hours of operation. You guys want to go real quick and talk about?
Sure. At the Johnson County Library, it's open anytime Central's open. So Monday through Thursday, 9 to 9. Friday, 9 to 6. Saturday, 9 to 5. Sunday, 1 to 5.
Right now, apart from special classes that are already booked, we're open during Science City's hours, which are 10 to 5, roughly 7 days a week in the summer, and then we're closed outside of the summer on Mondays.
A quick caveat, my friend and I are rehabbing a 110-year-old building ourselves, and so we are in the infancy of building our makerspace. We just have guided workshops right now, like specific classes, and then we'll open up on Saturdays starting in the spring, and then if there's people want memberships, then we'll open it up for memberships when there's a kind of a saturation for need.
Our members get a key and an alarm code, so it's 24/7.
Yeah, and Hammerspace has a similar setup also, where you sign up for a membership. They have an open house on Thursdays, and then you can sign up to be a member, and then you get a key and a code and that kind of thing. And there are other locations. So I encourage all of you, if you're interested, to Google, ask, reach out, do that kind of stuff. There's a lot of elements, and there continue to be more interesting things in the community every day. So hopefully this has continued to stoke your curiosity on those issues. Looks like we have a question over here.
Yeah, hi. I got helperhouse.com in the Midtown, and what I help is I help people market their ideas, etc., on Etsy, Amazon, different places like that. Also, I learned about a thing called an L3C, which is a combination between an LLC and a 501c3, so that you can make money. You can Wikipedia L3C. My question is, somebody comes up with the next great invention, 3D prints it, whatever. Is there anything in place to take it to the next level without having to use old school Shark Tank venture capital? It looks like you guys could get together, crowdfund an invention, and then help everybody else, see?
So that space, I'll say a couple words about that. That space is constantly changing from all angles, right? So there's still the intellectual property thing, and I'm not an intellectual property attorney, I'm not giving you legal advice, so on and so forth, but protecting and open sourcing or not, there's a number of choices to be made there. There's a number of mechanisms available to gain funds, whether it's for an equity type situation or crowdfunding has become a very potent tool. And now there's even some refinement going on crowdfunding for equity, and so that space is changing every day. And things I would say right now, in a year or two, are still going to continue to move. And so there's all kinds of initiatives there, but then there's all kinds of other models for how do you collaborate, raise funds, and things like that. And so maybe Nick will say a couple things about bread and things like that as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that legislation is loosening in that realm, and the good news is we don't have to figure out how, what the vehicle for people to get that out there was, because if we were, that would be really difficult. There's already Kickstarter, there's already Neighborly, which is more for civic projects, and then there's smaller local organizations like Bread KC, which we actually hosted one just last week, and that's where you go to a dinner. You have 3 people present. They have an idea that they want to do. It could be a product. It could be a project. It could be a community-related project or sculpture, anything. And the folks at that dinner vote, and then you win a grant that night. So there's tons of different stuff, local, national.
Actually, I was the business librarian before I started the Makerspace, and so this sort of originated out of business. And one thing I would encourage people to do is check out the library. We have lots of resources and connections with business organizations, Kaufman, tech startups, and things like that, so that we can actually put people in connection with other people that can help them. The Small Business Development Center and other organizations like that, we can refer for more specific legal issues or patent issues and things like that. So go to the library.
And really, as you look at it, like entrepreneurship, making, all these things are really starting to intersect in very interesting ways, right? So you make something, there's a number of different progressions. You go from completely uninitiated to maker, right? You learn how to make something. Then you can go from maker to kind of craftsman, entrepreneur, professional. That's another transition, right? Then you can do a number of other things. And so each one of those things has resources, has people that have kind of knowledge and things like that in each of those spaces. And so it's interesting because we're starting to kind of jump from these different conversations. There's programs like eScholars from UMKC where they kind of help you think through some of the business side. There's community initiatives within even like Kaufman Labs where they teach you different tools, whether it's programming, 3D printing. There's all kinds of resources that are identifiable. But one of the interesting things about many of the community maker spaces here that we're talking about is it's an opportunity to come in, make other people that are making, and maybe connect with other people that have thought about it, right? And so the first step, or not maybe one of the first steps, I won't say that there's a single first step, is go out there, see what's in your community, see what people are making, and then there's all kinds of other resources, whether it's in the library, universities, other entrepreneurs, other makers. As you continue to make those connections, you really get a sense of kind of the richness and connectivity of the ecosystem we're continuing to build. So it's a great question. I think we have time maybe for another question. So if anybody's got a question, I would love to entertain a question. Okay.
I have a comment.
Okay, comments are great.
I just want to also say that this is really kind of important to me, but what we will not do is replace what was a really good makerspace, and that's like high school and middle school shop. Monetizing, people coming in, paying money, and us giving them space, it's going to be very difficult for us to ever fill that void. So I would implore you to write your senators, mayors, politicians, neighbors, and say, how do we reinstate a proper shop in schools? And safety's important, but using it as a reason why we can't learn how to make stuff, like safety should not be number one. How do we make stuff? How do we learn? How do we have fun? How do we get hit with a spark and say that hurt, but that was awesome, So I think that's super important, and I think that's not a void we will ever fill, and that is something that has to be done by a city, a municipality. I'll get off my soapbox.
And that's especially the case as things that we use and things that we interact with become less fixable and less, you're not fixing your car as often anymore. You're not doing the things throughout your daily life as well as your professional life. So I would actually accent that more. The nice thing, though, is that taking things apart and actually seeing how things work is sort of becoming a part of curriculum and education in general. And so maybe some of that will return. But I definitely agree that there should be continued emphasis on that. We have one more question in the back there.
Hi, I'm sorry if this is a repeat question because I came in at the end. I'm actually a third grade teacher, and I came because I wanted to get some inspiration. of things that I can do in my classroom. And currently, I use Makey Makey and the Lego Education Robotics. Are there any other resources that you would recommend? Because I'm really trying to network and learn more to see what I can do, because I feel very, very strongly that there's a big gap in education, actually. More in the elementary. I think there are the labs in the secondary, like you mentioned, but I think we need to get them young. I also use Scratch with the children, and I'm learning Snap this summer because I like the fact that they can make their own blocks, but I'm having some issues with Berkeley's website. And I'm also learning MIT's App Inventor, but my kids are one-to-one with Chromebooks, and it doesn't allow me to download an emulator, and so that's kind of a problem as well. So what are some other resources that I can use at a young level?
Sure.
There. Hello? Okay, sorry. We use a lot of stuff in the Maker Studio, and I can definitely talk to you afterwards too. One that I throw out there are Little Bits. They're really great. They are modular electronic components. They're magnetic blocks that fit together, so they only go a certain way, but it's a good way to break the barrier for electronic circuitry, and kids can build all kinds of things with them. We often run prototyping sessions, so we're encouraging the creativity and sort of talking about business models when we do that. But then there's also really easy ways. There's a lot of support on Make Magazine's website, and also Instructables is a really good place to go. And then actually MIT has a really good PDF that you can download about soft circuits. So it's integrating electronics into like clothing and stuffed animals. They're really good about having support through there. Yeah.
There's another website called Make It at Your Library, and they actually break it down by how easy the project is and for what age range it's good for. So, and you can actually filter it out that way, and it'll come up with some projects. But I second the Make, I second the Little Bits. Those are awesome. Squishy circuits.
I would vote for connecting with other educators that are thinking about the same thing in the community. So there is a Lean Lab in Kansas City that just got started up. They're in the Sprint Accelerator this summer. There's an education meetup before Million Cups at Kauffman Labs running for a couple weeks, where there's some educators talking about some interesting things. And in general, figuring out like the curriculum side, how do you actually make it happen, is as hard as any of the technical issues or resources available. And so I was at Olathe East, where the group I was working with actually got a MakerBot through the MakerBot initiative. And so even thinking down these lines allows you to become aware of different initiatives and things that can enable and support your work. So I would encourage you, very much like I'm encouraging these guys and you all, to connect with the maker communities. There's movements within education that help to kind of contextualize and put that through a little bit of a more focused lens. So there's definitely a lot going on in that space as well.
Before we run out of time,
Yes.
just on a broader note, I wanted to mention that my partner in the Maker Studio, Luis Rodriguez, with Kauffman Foundation, has been working on a maker map for Kansas City. So we're trying to get all of the maker spaces, and we've had a lot of participation so far. It's Maker Map KC. And we are in beta right now, but if anybody knows a makerspace that wants to help us, we just really want to list, location, hours, capabilities, stuff that we kind of talked about in the beginning, so that the community can have resources.
Yeah, and it's been a great panel. I want to thank all of our panelists, but I want to encourage the audience before all of you take off, and maybe if I can get a little louder, anybody standing around, outside of the Maker Faire, visit your maker spaces, because there's a lot of other things going on throughout the year. So this is about as loud as I can get with these things without blowing the speakers, but visit your maker spaces.
Maker Faire doesn't have to end after Sunday.
That's right. The fun can keep on going. So thank you for the panelists that have participated in this great panel. Meredith with the Johnson County Library, Ryan with the Maker Studio in Union Station and Science City, Nick Ward-Bopp with the Maker Village and the Jarbo Initiative, and then Eric with the Lawrence Makerspace. And also thank you to all the other wonderful corporate, private, community, all kinds of maker and innovation initiatives around Kansas City that weren't represented. So go to Maker
Maker Map KC.
Maker Map KC and continue to join that conversation. Thank you for your time, and I think we'll stick around for a couple questions. I just volunteered some people for something they didn't sign up for, and thanks for your time. Thanks for coming to Maker Faire.